So let's look at synergy to create wealth. Jot these down. So first of all, most of us, the word we're after is synergy. Jot that down. 1 + 1 equals what? Equals more than 2. Does that make sense? So by combining more than one strategy together, you can actually get exponential increase in wealth, okay? So what we're looking at is, first of all, most of us will start with a job. Is that true? If you don't have a job, well then no income. Will these strategies work with no income? Then you need to have an income. You need to get one, okay? Then this is the most predominant path to creating wealth in Australia. It varies in different cultures. Australia has a lot, for our global views, Australians are very much into owning their own house. I know in Europe, some of the European nations where most people rent for life is more normal. But this is a way, in certain cultures it's working. In the US, a lot of people did it this way. So people tend to save up their money and put a deposit on what? On a house. And over time, that house will do what? Increase in value. Okay, admittedly in America, those Americans found that it did that over most of the time. Then it did have a property crash, but that's for obvious reasons we'll look at today. And then the path to wealth has been then to buy, ideally pull out some equity and invest that elsewhere, predominantly as a deposit on another property, and over time buy more property. That is the surest, most common path to wealth in Australia. It's not that sexy, not that glamorous, but is it effective, yes or no? Yes, so people go, well, that's all right for people in the past. They've seen properties double every 10 years or so, or even less, and you keep on going back, you'll see the prices of property. Now, if you have a belief system that everything sounds too good to be true, then what you'll find is that you won't believe it's possible what's happened with property. So that sounds too good to be true. So you have to study history. History will give you a bit of an idea about the future. If you go back, and I don't know whether they showed you last night, but if we had a PowerPoint to show what the prices of Sydney houses were in the 1950s, as an example, to what they are, 10 years later and 10 years later as you get right up today, you wouldn't believe how cheap it was. And you go, my God, how could people ever imagine you'd be paying $1 million on average for a home? And $1 million doesn't get you that nice of a home in Sydney. Does that make sense? $1 million in the United States of America, in some cities, you can live in an absolute mansion. That's the difference. Even in Australia, like $1 million in the Gold Coast will buy you a nice home. Like something that would be 5 times the price in Sydney. So it depends where you live. Like in Sydney, you're one of the most expensive cities on the planet. Do you realize that? So people go, I can go to Sydney, I'll get paid lots of money, but you need to get paid lots of money to compensate for the high cost of everything. So if things are really expensive where you live, you can't really arbitrage. So jot this down, arbitrage. The best way to create wealth is arbitrage. So I arbitrage. I have a home on the Gold Coast that if that home was in Sydney would cost 5 times the amount. Does that make sense? So because I don't have to live in any particular location to earn an income, I can live wherever I choose. So you free up your lifestyle, you can live wherever you choose. A lot of Australians will live in Bali as an example. Why? They can earn an Australian income, but live in, they're arbitraging. In other words, very low cost place to live. So they can live, they are that much wealthier, okay? In Australia, if you earn a high income, but you have to live where it's very expensive, then you're not arbitraging. So if you set up your lifestyle even more free, you can actually benefit from that, okay? So that's the surest path to creating wealth, and that's what we're going to look at. And that's been the financial blueprint that was shared for 17 years with our members. Has been predominantly save money, invest in real estate. Over time, quality real estate will go up in value. And we've seen that to be true. Okay, there is countless 21st century members that sat in the same program over the last 10, 15, 17 years that are now multimillionaires. All I did was kick their butt to get them into action. They got out there and they just did something. They bought 1 or 2 properties. Some were accidental, didn't even know what they were doing. They just managed to buy 1 or 2 properties and never sell them. And they've become, I call, accidental millionaires. Okay, but they accidentally did something. That's what you've got to do. It all comes down to actually just doing something. Now, I know some people and a lot of people watching you want to know what my view is on the future of property. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's just look at what's happened so far, and then we'll go into the, what's going to happen in Australian real estate. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in the US real estate market, and the main thing we're going to look at is crisis is opportunity. Okay. So then the other area you can invest in is obviously where else can you invest? Other sector is stock market. Is it true? There's only really 3 areas. predominant areas, you're going to invest predominantly it's property or real estate or the stock market. So ASX or the markets in the US or Europe, etc. So you can also do that. So what I'm going to focus on today, if you want to learn a lot more about dozens of strategies we've taught over the years in here, such as renting shares and things like that, it's on the DVD sets, on the home study, you can watch all that. But we've always predominantly taught people to buy property predominantly for capital growth, and we taught people over here predominantly for cash flow, where most people don't do it that way. So you can use your equity and invest in other areas. So there's particular areas you can do. Now, what we also teach is the mistake a lot of people make. They just want to retire as quickly as possible. They hate their job and they just want to make enough money from investing to quit their job. So they neglect their job. What you want to do is not neglect this. You want to actually increase your income and do some of the strategies we talked about before lunch, becoming a contractor or consultant or boosting your income and making a second or third income. Because if you can boost your income, you can save more and you can pour more into your investment strategy. The biggest mistake I see some people make is they just want to quit their job too soon. You want to increase your income. And that's what I did. I changed my working conditions when I worked for my mentor on a different contract, and I rapidly accelerated my income. I was able to pay down debt faster and invest quicker into building a property portfolio. And then I got into the stock market, etc. And the more I learned, the more that I did. Okay. I've made, just from cash flow, almost $100,000 some months from cash flow strategies in the stock market. And in real estate, obviously I've bought, tens and tens of millions of dollars of real estate over the years. And then I've gone into more sophisticated, obviously now I do a lot of land projects, etc., but also real agriculture, invested close to $10 million in agriculture investments. Don't particularly recommend that one for the average person, unless you've got tax problems. So there's a lot of areas, but real estate predominantly and business. So as you become smarter here with your job, what you would start to do is become more entrepreneurial, build up second, third incomes. And if you build up an empire, you'll build up many different companies and many different incomes. And I all learned this off my millionaire mentor. He had, half a dozen or more than a dozen type of incomes from different companies he was involved in. And I thought that's the way that you do it. And, just learn off that, and that's what I did. Make sense? So let's look at how do we get started? Jot this down very quickly. 8 ways to get started. Some of you already have money to get started. It's easier. Others of you thinking, well, I'd love to invest, but where am I going to get the capital from to invest? I'm going to help solve some of those problems today. Number 1 is you can save some money. Is that true? If you can't save, you can't actually live your dreams. You can't become an investor. So some of you are good savers. Something else you could do is sell something. Okay? Now, you don't have to join Tupperware or Avon, but is there something you can sell? Can you have a garage sale? Is there your spare car, spare boat, spare furniture, spare bike, spare spouse, spare children, whatever it is, okay? Short-term pain for long-term gain, okay? Cash them in and then you can always, cash them in and you can always have more later, okay? So, sell something. So in other words, do whatever it takes. Have a garage sale, okay? And just to clarify, this is how ridiculous some regulators are sometimes. When I say garage sale, do you understand I'm not telling you to sell your actual garage? What I'm saying is you have, quote, figuratively speaking, garage sale and you put things out the front of your garage and you sell those things. Is that okay? Just making sure the regulators in Australia understand that people aren't stupid, okay? And they actually can understand that you're not actually selling your garage, okay? So anyhow, bureaucrats, they get a little bit confused. I think they get hazy looking at computer screens sometimes. So number 3 is you can reduce your tax, okay? Do you go and offshore it and avoid tax? No, do not go directly to jail. In Australia, if you avoid paying tax and do illegal things, you'll go straight to jail. There's no point building all this wealth up and then living under fear that the ATO is going to audit you and send you to jail. Because the ATO in Australia or the IRS and whatever in the US, etc., they will gladly send you to jail to make you an example of. They've sent like 70-odd-year-old grandparents to jail, even sometimes for not paying their tax. So it doesn't matter who you are, they'll send you to jail. So the point is, you want to pay your tax legally. So here's what you want to do in Australia. You don't have to do anything illegal around tax because we have the best legal tax saving scheme on the planet. Who can tell me what it is? Negative gearing, or superannuation is not bad either. But negative gearing, jot that down. It's a legal tax scheme. So why do something illegal? Why ever it's around, negative gearing is the best tax minimization scheme on the planet, okay? Take advantage of it. So many people are paying all this tax, and they don't realize that tax could be paying off an investment property. So some are saying, well, the politicians are eyeing off negative gearing, etc. Well, they've been eyeing it off for years. You remember what happened when Paul Keating did change it? It changed it back very quickly, okay? True, they might amend negative gearing in the future, but I doubt they're going to go to the next election around negative gearing, either party, okay? It's political suicide. So at the moment, wherever it's available, it's available. In the future, they change it, might only be available on new property, not existing property, because the idea is to stimulate supply. So either way, what is negative gearing? You're not sure. That's basically, let's say you have an investment property, the rent's not covering all the mortgage, so it's negatively geared. It's costing you money out of your pocket, so you can write a lot of that off in tax. You also write off depreciation of the building, so you get a lot of tax benefits. Not the sole reason you should invest, of course. You should invest for the sole reason that it's a good investment, but it's certainly a great advantage, because in the beginning, in Australia particularly, properties are often negative cash flow. And then over time, the rents go up and it becomes positive cash flow. Today, you're going to learn in Australia, and I know a lot of people listening this afternoon just to find out how the hell can you buy property, no money down in Australia that's positively cash flow, because most people don't know how to do that, but you're going to learn that with one of our speakers after I finish, okay? Now some of you are going, can you just get off the stage now then? Can we just bring her straight on? So the point is tax. Do it legally. There's ways to minimize your tax, but the best way to minimize your tax is to become a what? A property investor, okay? Is to be an investor. And number 4 is, team, what's number 4? I wrote this book a long time ago. Oh, I forgot. I mixed them up. Please forgive me. Income. Go to work on increasing your income, of course. So we've talked about that before, how to increase your income. How's a couple other ways to increase your income? There's one simple way that, thanks to technology, so I tested this last year. One of my, actually Kartik, who runs our US property division, he said, Jamie, because I live in Melbourne most of the time and I'm often traveling, etc. So I have a home on the Gold Coast, which is effectively my holiday home. So he said, you should try this Airbnb, often not there, and try renting out your holiday house out on the Airbnb and see if this strategy works. So I like to test strategy before I tell you guys about them. And it was really popular, and you got up to nearly $30,000 a month in rental. Just holiday renting empty space that just sits there. And keeps my housekeeper employed, etc. And so I thought, wow, maybe the average person can't get $30,000 a month, but could they make a couple of $1,000s a month? Who's heard of Airbnb before? Okay, quite a few people. Who's never heard of Airbnb? Okay, so if you want a holiday cheaply around the world, jot this down, Airbnb. I call it the Ashton Kutcher strategy. Why? Because Ashton Kutcher is one of the major investors, early stage investors in Airbnb. He's been very instrumental in making a successful company. So how do you spell it? Just Air as in AIRBNB.com, Airbnb. So go there. We'll actually show you some examples on the website. So as an example, so if you want to travel cheaply, instead of paying, say, $600 a night to stay in Sydney at the Hilton and stay in a tiny little room, you could go on Airbnb and stay in someone's apartment. Or I remember when I was at an event in Homebush last year, I stayed on a harbourside mansion for virtually $300 or $400 a night. So why would I stay in the Hilton and for $600 a night for a small room? When you say, so this lady, what she had a multi-story mansion. She lived upstairs in the whole bottom section, which was kitchen, bedrooms, pool, overlooking the harbour. She let out to holiday guests. So you could just stay there. So you get all this for a fraction of what you get at a small hotel room. So if you're traveling, Airbnb is a great way to save money. But let's say you had a house. And let's say you had an investment property. Let's say you just had a house and you had some spare rooms. You mightn't want to permanently rent it to people because you like your own space, but you could rent it out to international holiday travelers. that might use it for 1 or 2 nights at a time, and you can extract quite a lot of rent. So if we looked at, let's say you had a place in Bondi. I know people now that have quit their corporate jobs. They have a 3-bedroom apartment, say, in Bondi. They live in one room and they holiday let the other 2 rooms out. They no longer have to work because they're getting $150 to $300 a night per room. And also, if they want, they can mix and mingle with the other people, or they just have set off with complete privacy. Or often people might travel. So let's say you wanted to travel for a month. You knew in August this year you're going to go overseas for the month. You could go and put your house on Airbnb, a holiday rent for a month of August while you're going to be overseas. The money you'll get for renting out your house can pay for your holiday to rent out another house somewhere overseas on Airbnb. Who's following what I'm saying? So you can do it to get free holidays, okay? You can do it to generate extra income. Now, some of you are going, well, that house, I don't really want anyone in my house, okay? Fair enough. But what if you had an investment property where often you can get 10 to 12, 15% rental yields? You can have, or ideally, jot this down, how to have a holiday home for free. See, thanks to this technology, you can now effectively have a holiday home for free. Why? Because in the past, holiday homes were expensive. You had to buy them, they were a lifestyle investment, and they didn't generate you any income. Now, you can have a holiday home which you use 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, whenever it is. The rest of the time, what are you going to do with it? You're going to put on Airbnb, or Stays, or Booking.com, or there's a whole host of them. Airbnb is probably the best. And they're not expensive. They charge like 4%. And it's all done for you through the website. You can see who you're letting into your house or not. It's all social accountability. So it's very strict on those conditions. They process the money for you. You don't have to do anything other than have a housekeeper look after your house after they leave. Makes sense? And you get paid for the cleaning anyhow. So technology has made this possible. So you could effectively have a holiday home now, use it when you want, the rest of the time it can be paying for itself, or possibly make you money. So that's really changed. It meant luxury living. So Airbnb is tapping into luxury living without paying luxury prices. This is the trend that is happening now. So who here has some spare bedrooms in their house? Okay. So you could potentially make an extra income if you wanted to. If you wanted to buy an investment property or holiday home, you could actually turn that into an investment because you can do this with. Does it make sense? Okay, so do you want to quick see some examples of Bondi? Do you have any? So this is Airbnb. Airbnb should pay me for telling the world how good they are. They probably do have an affiliate thing, don't they? So if you look, so this is Bondi. Obviously Bondi, you go, well, Bondi is a popular area because people from around the world, all they wanted to go was to Bondi Beach. But you can see there, so some people, look at this one here, it looks like that's a bedroom, but there's some places you'll see they'll even let out their couches. Some people even their cars, sleep in their car, boats, whatever. But you see, look how much, this is per night. Now that's supply and demand, so those prices are listed there. That means they're pretty much getting those prices. Otherwise, they drop their prices to get bookings. So even little basic rooms, this is per night. So you think about people now, the extra income they're getting. Is it costing them anything to do this? Airbnb, you list for free. They only take 4% out of the fees that they process the money for you, and they pay you once the person checks in. And they take a bond as well and everything. So look, $240 a night, $121, and this is growing. There's all these people all getting extra cash flow, okay? Also, a lot of people don't mind if they've got a spare bedroom because they don't mind meeting international travelers. I think that the concept of meeting people from different parts of the world is very healthy, okay? Or if you just got a place of your own vacant, you just put it out on Airbnb. And you can make a lot of money. So you see a whole example after example. You might go, well, I don't live in Bondi. What if I live in Mount Druitt? Well, forget it, okay? No, but there's probably people watching from around the world that don't know about Mount Druitt. Shh. So they are probably still okay? There's backpackers that will stay anywhere, okay? So the point being, no offense to anyone from Mount Druitt, it's probably a nice place who's never been there. I've only watched the TV shows, okay? Struggle Street, is that it? And I saw the whole 5 minutes of it.
So what if you went in a city area?
So what you can do, so let's go to Bendigo. So we have a Vineyard bed and breakfast. We're turning into a resort in Bendigo. Some of you might have already stayed there. You're welcome to stay there. So So even in Bendigo, it's a country city. So could you actually do this? Let's say you're thinking about buying a holiday home or an investment property. Could you actually be so devious as to put a listing up on Airbnb before you actually buy the place and see how many potential inquiries you would get? You could actually test before you buy. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that, but I'm saying all the other way, you don't have to. You could just go to similar properties in that area, in that suburb, and see what the market is paying. Pretty much that is market rent, because if they weren't getting that, they dropped the price to where they are getting bookings. Does it make sense? So that is Bendigo. Look at that house. That is not exactly prime Australian real estate. True? $75. It's probably for the whole house, I'd say. Private room, how's that? I just Google that and they'll tell you the answer. So this is becoming a trend that's becoming more popular now. But what it does is for the average person, it gives them another way to holiday cheaply, or another way to pay for the holidays, or a way to generate extra income. As I said, there's people right now in Sydney and many cities that no longer have to work because they're able to generate so much income from Airbnb. Okay? Quick question? Airbnb probably started, I'm guessing, 5 years ago. It started, I think, in San Francisco. They wanted to rent out some of their own rooms, and the concept took off. So, but it's becoming very popular now. Yeah, 2 guys. Yeah, they want to. So people are even renting out their couches. So, any other questions? We just have a mic come around so our global viewers can hear what your questions are. Who likes the concept of this? At least for cheap holidays. Great way to, and also some of my team that travel to the States a lot, they will deliberately do Airbnb because you know what? They get a host. So if you're in another city and you're sharing, you can either rent out houses all to yourself, so I kind of like to do that, so you have privacy, or you can rent out a section. So they like to travel. They don't mind that because the person that owns the house is a local host and will show them around or tell them all the local places to go in the city. So you almost get an inbuilt travel guide, okay? Plus they're meeting people from different cultures, which I think is healthy. Does anyone have any questions on Airbnb? We'll just get the microphone for you, fire away.
Jamie, I was just wondering, like, for example, your Gold Coast home, what would be the average vacancy rate? Like, do you rent it maybe 5 nights out of 30, or?
It really depends how you want it, because you've got to say, well, when you're using it, so you block off when I'm using it or my family's using it, but when I know I'm not yet there, I'm not going to be using it, then it can be on the market. So you can just select the calendar of when you want it available. But if you wanted to just have something that's always rented, I'm buying another property which is in Gold Coast to do this on. And that particular property is already earning $250,000 a year. So you can earn quite substantial incomes.
That's what I want to do, buy a house on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, if you wanted to, I was going to set up a technically quote Airbnb fund and just raise money to people buy Gold Coast homes. Now is the last chance you have to buy Gold Coast mansions at a discount. They are rising in value and they'll double in value probably in the next 2 or 3 years. Easily double in value just back to what they were before pre-GFC days. Gold Coast and Cairns and these holiday markets are one of the markets that did drop 40-50%, similar to what happened in the US. So the rest of them didn't do that. So there's properties, you could buy, there was one that went for sale in my street. I did put an offer in on it. It was at the end of the street. It was a bank foreclosure. It was probably worth $2 million in the proper market. Went for 1.35, and you could earn on that probably 140 to 150,000 a year Airbnb income, and still use it as a holiday home several months of the year. So think about that. That would be positive cash flow in a market that's going to rebound. And you can have a holiday home, especially this time of year, people like to be on the Gold Coast as an example. So you can arbitrage. So it does, before to have a holiday home was really, it was a luxury. Now it can be an investment, which is pretty cool. You get lifestyle and an investment. So those things, thanks to technology, it's now possible. Okay. Quick question, just the microphone.
How do you manage natural disasters such as floods that Gold Coast has had of late?
How do you manage it?
Yeah, I would worry to buy a property after looking at all the floods that they've had recently.
Oh, the floods?
I would worry about buying a property in
Gold Coast. I don't think that. Brisbane maybe's had a few floods, but Gold Coast, the floods don't tend to hurt the houses, no.
Cool. Thanks.
No, you don't have to worry about it. There's very few houses in the Gold Coast that actually flood. Yeah. Brisbane's more of that problem, but who cares, you know? It's like river frontage, you know, water frontage. It's appealing to some people. Make sense? Who's excited? It gives you an idea. Now, you may never do it, but it means that you always have the option. See, peace of mind is knowing you have an alternative to generate extra income. Okay, that's just one way. Would you like another simple way, thanks to technology? How's this though, before I cover that? There's another way that you can actually have luxury living without luxury prices. And apparently it's in Australia now, which my PA has been doing some research on. She's probably outside. She can check it out. I haven't checked it out. But in the US, I know it's here, that you can actually fly in Learjets for as little as $500. So what they do, you can join a site, and in the US, I forget what the name is, be handy if I can remember, but you just Google it. And there's these different websites you can join. So what they do is back charter. So let's say a jet is flying to Las Vegas from LA. So they might put on there and say, okay, so someone's chartered the jet and paid, whatever, $5,000 to fly to Las Vegas on it, but has to fly back empty. So they will put it, some of these jets will put it on to these sites that then will email out to everyone that's on it, subscribe and go, by the way, on this date at this time, the jet's flying back from Vegas to, say, Los Angeles, and it's $4.95 a seat, and they'll sell off each seat. And then they might make a couple of $1,000s on the back leg, which would have been empties. But the benefit you get to go on a Learjet for a fraction of the price. Who thinks that's pretty cool? Who'd like that to come to Australia? Well, apparently it has, okay? Dell, my PA, if you ever know where she is, she's outside somewhere. I did send her the link to it. I think it's called EasyJets, but I'd have to check. AirShares might be one of them, yeah. So I haven't checked it out, so I can't say due diligence on it yet, but I think there's sites that you can actually opt in and you'll just get emails. Like apparently there was one from Melbourne to the Gold Coast, back leg, $1,700 for a seat. Some people go, that might be a little bit expensive, but to fly on a jet, that's very cheap, okay? So they do have deals that come out, so just if you ever want to go on a Learjet, basically luxury living becoming available for more affordable prices, okay? Boats, if you ever want to stay on a nice boat, Airbnb, you can stay on boats, okay? And sleep on boats, there's big boats, and you can have a nice holiday on a luxury boat and sleep on them. So, other thing, the other trend that's becoming very popular, it's been in the news a lot, is the trend of also having a chauffeur driver for, instead of paying luxury prices, for low cost, without paying the luxury prices. Who can tell me a company that is upsetting the taxi industry right now? Uber. Who's heard of Uber? Okay. Who hasn't heard of Uber? Half of you in this room have not heard of Uber. Can you believe that? Half of you don't even know who Uber is. Is that amazing? Is that amazing? Half of you don't know. So half the viewers watching this from around the world probably don't know who Uber is. That's amazing. Okay, so let me give you an idea. As Richard Branson said, any industry that's overcharging, giving bad service, if you can undercut them, deliver better service, and make a profit, there's an opportunity to make money. And if there's ever been an industry that's delivered such pathetic service for so long that deserves to be destroyed and run into the ground and have no regulatory support whatsoever, that would be the Australian taxi industry. So, sorry if you're a taxi driver, but it's actually good news if you're a taxi driver because you actually get paid more to drive for a decent service and a decent company. To end with taxis, okay? Why? Because I detest organisations that rip people off. Cab charge, charging you, use a credit card to pay through a taxi, they're charging you 10%. For how long? Is that not a rort? If you did that in any other industry, they'd send you to jail, okay? So I'm not a fan of the taxi industry. So what is Uber? Uber was a simple app. Anyone could have thought of it. Okay, once again, I think it was just designed, some people in San Francisco, not seeing the bigger picture, but obviously grew to that. So if you haven't used Uber before, you can download the app. Actually, give them the list. So Uber will give you $25 in credit. If you go to whatsuber.com, so if you go there, they will give you $25 credit, so you get basically a free ride on Uber. So how Uber works is that you'll have... So on my phone, I'm probably the biggest user in Australia of Uber. I would spend thousands a month on Uber. Now I still use personal chauffeur drivers some of the time for pre-bookings. One sec, I'll just try and unlock my phone. So there we have Uber. So it'll open up eventually. It's usually much quicker than this. Okay, so that shows, see there, so it shows where we are right now at near the airport, and you see all those little black cars? That's all the Uber vehicles, so you can see how close they are. So that's Uber X. If I wanted to go, so Uber X is just normal cars. Or you can go Uber Black, it's for the more luxury private chauffeur cars. They'll charge you more. So there's two of those. So that'll say Uber, it's 3 minutes away. So if I needed an Uber here right now to the hotel, I can press that, or on Uber X, either one. So let's go Uber X. I can press that. And I'll simply say request Uber X. If I press that now, they'll send one here. Okay? And then it can track. So now the taxi industry go, oh, it's not safe to use Uber. Bullshit. Uber drivers are better socioeconomic class generally, much safer. It's social accountability. And you can see wherever you go on Uber. So someone's tracking you. Much safer than a taxi. Something can happen in a taxi, you're not going to know where it is. And also what women love Uber. Why? Women feel safer in Uber than they do in a taxi. So don't listen to propaganda about taxis, it's just bullshit propaganda. Uber is delivering a better service and the taxi industry should get off its ass and deliver a better service or be wiped out. Fair enough? Okay. That's what we want. That's disruption technology. And Uber operate on, what's that saying? Don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness later. Okay. So they know regulation has to catch up to it. So, the regulators will try and fine them and say it's against the law, but they're getting it all sorted out. So because, why wouldn't we want improved, better pricing, etc. So that's Uber. So some members, what they're doing is also, they want an extra income. So you can go and be an Uber driver, and people of all sorts of levels of socioeconomic, even entrepreneurs, etc., or busy people that have some spare time, you can join Uber as an app and they'll pay you 80%. So you've got a car and need some extra income. Some people, I know, you get a couple $100 a day, some really busy days up to $500 a day, driving their car around, picking people up on Uber and dropping them off. So a lot of people now are doing it as extra income. On the Gold Coast, it's just going all crazy. It's so popular there. So it's another form of income. So some people want extra income. You can just sign up and be an Uber driver. How much is it to sign up to be an Uber driver? It's free, okay? And they have a good rating service. So if you get less than, I think, 3, after every booking, you can rate the driver. If they get less than 3 stars, they boot them off the network. Imagine if you could do that on taxis. How many taxi drivers you would have sacked by now? So remember that. Don't accidentally press a low rating because you're not sure what you're doing and it might be a nice driver. He'll lose his job. So yeah, Uber, you can earn 80%. That's the other thing. So Uber keeps 20%. They give 80% to the drivers. In the taxi industry, they don't do that. So Uber is a saying you might have saw on Facebook recently. I think I posted it. It was, the biggest media company in the world doesn't produce any media, i.e. Facebook. The biggest taxi company in the world doesn't own any taxis, i.e. Uber. The biggest hotel company in the world doesn't actually own any hotels, Airbnb. And the biggest retailer on the planet, Alibaba, doesn't actually sell anything, okay, of their own stuff. It's all basically other people's stuff. So technology has really made things possible. What it's doing, though, is a trend that Randy Zuckerberg picked very well, luxury living without paying luxury prices. So what that means is, for middle-class people in most countries, that they're now being able to take advantage of what only wealthy people used to be able to do. Okay? And that's what technology brings. Remember when the biggest, greatest TVs come out? They were like $70,000 or whatever. Only wealthy people could afford them, but, just wait a few years and they come right down in price. Technology keeps bringing things down in price. Remember, it used to only be certain wealthy people that had car phones, okay? But then they become now everyone has. So those things are happening. That's just a trend. Does that make sense to everyone? So some of you, if you need extra cash, you want to be an Uber driver, but there's an extra way, nothing outlay, that you can actually generate extra income. If you have a car, sign up for Uber, and in between your jobs, you just take whatever job you want. You might be, have spare time and generate extra income. It's pretty simple. Who thinks that's a good idea? Okay, not for everyone, but for some of you. If you want to really get to where you want to go faster, then obviously extra income can boost that up in the beginning. Okay, number 5 is Jot this down, equity. 5 is equity. Okay, so most people, this is how they'll start investing. If you own your own home, let's say this. So let's say you have a house and it's worth $600,000. And let's say you owe the bank, you have a $200,000 mortgage on the house. You owe the bank $200,000. How much is your equity? So you got $400,000 in equity, the portion of the house that you own. Okay. So if you wanted to use that equity, you could get a line of what? A line of credit, which means you can increase this loan up to, say, subject to your income, affordability, say 80%, generally. 80% of 600,000 is how much? Is 480,000. Do these figures, jot them down. So you, less the 200,000 debt you already have means how much spare cash could you pull out of that property? $280,000. Does everyone see that? $280,000 you could pull out. Now, if you watch the CBA ads or the bank ads, they'll go pull it out and buy a boat or go on a holiday. No. If you're going to pull it out, we're going to invest it smartly. Make sense? Now, some people, you might use that as a deposit on a piece of property. Some of you might want to go on the stock market, whatever you choose to do. It's up to you. So you pull that out. So some people go, well, Jamie, I've been paying off my house and paying it down. I don't want to take, it's risky to use my equity for investing. Yes, it is. But as we know, there's a risk to everything. True? So what we have to do is weigh up one risk to the next. So let's look at the risk. Let's look at the most basic financial formula that people have been using, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, for the last 17 years we've been teaching this. This is the most basic formula to make $1 million net worth in the next 10 years. Okay, and that's simply they would buy 2 properties over the next few years, and let's say there's $600,000 properties today. So person A decides to do this. Let's say they're working the same job, person A and B. Person A decides to use some of their equity to invest in other properties, say 2 properties. Person B doesn't. Person B is too scared. They're like, oh, it's too risky. I'm just going to keep paying off my mortgage. Okay? So the person that keeps paying off their mortgage, effectively the rate of return they're getting is the cost of their interest. So their mortgage is costing them 6% per annum and they just keep paying off their mortgage. They're effectively making 6% return on their money because that's what they're saving in interest. Where if they were to do what person A does is invest elsewhere and get more leverage, then the rate of return they're getting could be so much higher. Because let's look at this for an example. If you listen to financial planners and their script for you, they will tell you this. They will go, look, the stock market goes up and down, but always goes higher in the long run, which statistically has always happened. And it's averaged 13% return per annum. And real estate properties only average, say, 6%. Therefore, the clear winner is, the financial planner will tell you, is the stock market. But don't invest directly yourself. It's too risky. Leave it up to us. We're the experts because we have a license, okay? And we'll manage it for you in a managed fund. Okay, and that's the script, that's their sales script, and that's what a lot of people sign up and they just put all their money into managed fund. But they don't actually compare apples with apples because the difference is what they're forgetting here. In real estate, do you save up and wait till you've got the cash to pay for your house in cash in full? Or usually once you've got 10% deposit, you'll try and get finance. So these days even possibly less. So 10% deposit. In the stock market though, would you be comfortable just putting 10% deposit in and borrowing the rest, yes or no? Well, no, you can't generally, and nor would you be comfortable with it. That's what happened in the Great Depression. 90% margin loans in the stock market. Everyone was making money in the roaring 20s, remember? Or some of you probably don't. But the roaring 20s, that's what happened. The Great Gatsby era, okay? So everyone was in the stock market, everyone was making money. It was just going up, 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 and then the crash come because it was, the liquidity was pulled out of the market. So if we compare apples with apples, most people aren't going to leverage this in a managed fund. So here, if you've got to times this 6% by 10, what's 6% times 10? 60%. So when you compare apples with apples, can you sleep at night with real estate? Yes. Sleep at night factor. Money in stock market managed fund, can you sleep at night? Not as some could, but unless you've got really good stock, you still have that. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Right? You're concerned. In the credit crisis, did houses drop by half? Apart from the Gold Coast, no. Maybe 10% correction, 10, 15%. So it went through that and they rose again. Okay, so 60%. So the real rate of return is quite high. Here's what a lot of people don't, and this will help give you an answer in the future. I was talking about this the other night. Is even, what's going to happen in the future with property? Well, think about this. What if inflation, which they like to keep under 3%, which isn't a problem at the moment, what if inflation, just alone, will you tell your kids, don't buy a house yet, wait 10, 15 years, it should be cheaper? You'd have to be pretty game to do that. It's a pretty big bet. Because even if the property market doesn't perform as well, at 3% inflation times 10 leverage, what does that equal as a rate of return? 30%? See, no one ever factors that in. No one ever thinks about that. Inflation alone, if you're leveraging it, is a great way to make money. So one of the answers to your question, what's going to happen with future property prices in Australia, no one has a crystal ball, but that's kind of giving you a bit of a hint. Long term, will it be cheaper? Well, so you only have to buy in Sydney either. Sydney's a very expensive market. Can you buy property elsewhere outside Sydney? Yes, we'll look at that. So let's say they buy this property. Person A buys 2 properties. The goal is that in 10 years' time, this property will be worth what? It will be double, okay? That's what their plan is. Is there any guarantee of that? There is no guarantee, okay? Jamie will only invest if it's guaranteed, okay? There is no guarantee. In some products, actually, you can get a guarantee. So in saying there is no guarantee, you're going to learn a product later tonight about a way that you can get guarantee on some property investments, okay? But they're fairly unique. The average person doesn't know about. But generally, no, there's no guarantee. So, but historically, a $600,000 property in Sydney 10 years ago was about $300,000. If you don't know, if you research, it was about half that price. Go 10 years before, was it half that again? Yes, it was. It's actually probably been a bit quicker than that cycle. No guarantee, but let's say that happens. So person A in 10 years' time or thereabouts has 2 properties worth $1.2 million each, gone up in value. They have managed to also by then over 10 years. What happens to rents every sort of 7 to 9 years historically? They tend to double, okay? So which then they become positive cash flow and start paying down the debt. So also their debt on these 2 properties would have decreased, okay? But now you've got $2.4 million worth of real estate, making plus the house. So subject to how much is being paid down thereabouts, so it would have created some significant wealth. Is that true? Person A. Have they taken a risk to do that? They're taking a risk, but who can be comfortable with that risk? Knowing that you make sure you buy the properties at a good price, good area, you can do all your research beforehand. No one knows for sure what will happen in the property market, but at least you can do that, okay? If they did that, so person B though didn't do that. All person B did, same job, sitting next to each other, same income. Person B just went to work and paid off their debt, okay? And didn't leverage. 10 years later, the difference of where this person's at, okay? They become a self-made millionaire effectively. Person B, sitting next to them, they've both kept working the same job, same amount of effort. Person B would now have to win lotto to catch up to person A. Does that make sense? And they would have to win lotto. So effectively by being smart and getting educated, person A has done better than winning lotto. They've actually done it themselves. Who's following what I'm saying here? And is that overcomplicated? Has that happened for people countless times again and again in this country? Does it always happen that way? No. There's things that can go wrong. Would you like to know what can go wrong? No. Let's skip right past that, okay? Yes, of course things can go wrong. One, you can buy in the wrong location. Probably wouldn't work if you bought high-rise inner city apartments. Probably won't work. Wouldn't recommend that. Probably wouldn't work if you got free flights to the Gold Coast 10, 20 years ago and bought a high-rise apartment. High-body corporates, bad investments. So generally, we looked at last night, that we've been talking a little about land banking and stuff. Generally, you want to buy property that has land component. No offense if you like high-rise city apartments, but don't go, oh, Jamie told me about this formula that can make $1 million in the next 10 years. I'm going to go and buy 2 high-rise apartments. Won't work, okay? Not likely to work, not in Australia. You want to be looking like some friends come to a party I was hosting for the Grand Prix in Melbourne this year, and they live in a nice Melbourne suburb, young couple, and they'll say, Jamie, we're thinking about selling our house and buying an inner city apartment in Melbourne. What do you think we should do? What do you think I told them? No way. I like your property, buy and never sell. Jot that down. Buy and never sell. Ultimately, you're buying to never sell. Their property in a nice suburb in Melbourne, good investment. If they don't want to live there, rent it out. Then go and rent an apartment in Melbourne, in the city if they want to live in the city, and invest elsewhere. You don't have to own where you live, okay? You don't have to do that. Often you can have a better lifestyle by renting and invest your money elsewhere. If you haven't bought a home yet, if you're younger, do you have to buy your home first, or can you buy an investment property first? Investment property, often you're better off probably buying an investment property somewhere where you don't necessarily work. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, okay? So why high-rise city apartments? Well, there's a potential, if there's going to be a bubble in the property market, it's going to happen in the inner city, high-rise city apartment market. Also, you're competing with foreign investors, cashed up Chinese, which you won't compete with. They're paying cash and they're buying them for different reasons to you. They're buying them as a safe haven. They don't care if they pay 20% more than what they're worth. At least 80% of their money is protected. They want to get it out of China because they could lose a lot in China, okay? So different global cities, global markets. Sydney now has just overtaken Melbourne as the most cranes in the city. I think in the city has 173 cranes in the Sydney CBD, and Melbourne's about 6 behind, okay? So massive apartment boom. And that'll probably continue, but that's where I'd be concerned about when we're talking a property bubble building or an oversupply inner city apartments. Okay, suburban areas, you'll generally do good long term. Why? That's where families want to live, good land content, and safer investments. Who's following what I'm saying here? Okay, so that's where you can go wrong in high-rise inner city apartments. Make sense? Turn the person next to you, quickly teach them everything you've learned about Real Estate 101, and any questions you might have. Go for it quickly.